It is now 7:00 p.m. and I will call the meeting to order. Can I please get a roll call?
Vice President Anderson.
Here.
Counselor Blakely. Welcome back. Counselor Forbeck.
Here.
Counselor Keys.
Here.
Counselor Levy.
Here.
Counselor Preschel.
Here.
President Duncan.
Here.
Counselor Blakely.
Here.
We have all present.
Thank you. Counselors, please mute your phones. Everyone, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence for the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and former Council President Terry Monahan. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, you may be seated.
We have no special orders of the day and announcements. Under public hearings, 4A is consideration of Resolution 2020-156, approving a planned unit development master land use plan for the properties located at 202 Maple Avenue, 1500 Shore Drive, and a portion of 1459 6th Street.
Julie,
Can you bend the mic?
At this time, our Community Development Director, Julie Christensen, will provide us with an overview.
The City Council recently accepted the applicant's offer to purchase the land described by the City Clerk for this project contingent upon approval of a PUD Master Land Use Plan, PUD zoning, and certified survey map. All three of those are on the agenda tonight. The proposed redevelopment consists of the construction of a 23,700 square foot Boys and Girls Club building, an off-street parking lot, athletic fields, primary driveways on Shore Drive, and a drive on 6th Street. The certified survey map is on the consent agenda tonight. It creates a 4.4 acre parcel for this redevelopment and a 1.9 acre parcel to be retained by the city as protected open space along the creek. These properties are currently vacant land, and some of the property was recently used as a gravel yard, a west side storage area by the Public Works Department. But most of these structures, the structures that were on Maple Avenue, were purchased in 2002 and 2004 when we widened Maple Avenue. So the site plan for the layout for the Boys and Girls Club was included in your packet. Also included in your packet are renderings showing what the outside of the building is going to look like. This was sent out to the review agents, and the city engineer made some requests related to driveway locations and design and additional right-of-way dedication, which will ultimately be reflected on the certified survey map. Community service uses are required to have parking for 30% of capacity. They are proposing 59 parking stalls, which we believe it will be ample parking for this youth club. They are proposing setbacks of 16 feet from Maple and 26-foot setback from the western lot line signed with La Mexicana. It does show some parent drop-off pickup areas, and then there is the athletic field, which is along the creek. Plan Commission reviewed this at their last meeting and did recommend approval, subject to the conditions which are listed in the resolution before you tonight, which are that this approval authorizes the construction of a 23,700 square foot Boys and Girls Club building, off-street parking lot, athletic fields, primary driveways on Shore Drive and a secondary driveway on 6th Street. This approval shall not become effective unless and until the certified survey map creating the parcel to be conveyed from the city to the applicant is recorded and the applicant purchases or closes on Lot 1 of the certified survey map. The minimum building setback shall be 15 feet from all lot lines for all buildings on site. The maximum building height shall be 3 stories. 2 detached accessory buildings may be constructed on site. The final site plan shall include driveway locations and designs that are acceptable to the city engineer. The applicant is allowed to construct a total of 3 freestanding ground-mounted monument signs of no more than 150 square feet each. One of the signs may have an EVM panel, that's the electronic sign, up to 75 square feet as a secondary component to a non-EVM sign panel. A freestanding exclusive EVM sign is prohibited. Prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall obtain site plan and architectural approval, which shall include a detailed review of all site, grading, utility, landscape, and lighting plans. And then our standard condition of major changes coming back through this public process and minor changes being approved administratively. And just as a reminder, PUD has 3 steps to it. The first step is the approval of the PUD master land use plan. The second step is actually the rezoning to PUD, which is also on your agenda tonight. And Plan Commission did recommend approval.
Thank you, Julie. I think it was unanimous. Okay. At this time, the public hearing is open. Would the clerk treasurer please provide any input received?
We did not receive any written input on this item.
Thank you. Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposed, please come forward. Final call. Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposed, please come forward at this time. The public hearing is now closed. Can I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
Nancy Forbeck, I so move.
Moved by Councilor Forbeck. Is there a second?
Councilor Keys will second.
Second by Councilor Keys. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, thank you.
Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I do not, thank you.
Councilor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Prushel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, my questions were answered at the Plan Commission meetings. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, there's a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councilor Blakely.
Aye.
Councilor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councilor Keys.
Aye.
Councilor Levy.
Aye.
Councilor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item 4B is consideration of ordinance number 3684, amending the zoning district map from R1B, single-family residential, to planned unit development for the property located at 202 Maple Avenue, and from PLI to PUD for the properties located at 1500 Shore Drive and a portion of 1459 6th Street. First reading.
Thank you. Our Community Development Director, Julie Christensen, will provide us with another overview. Julie.
So this is the second step that I mentioned earlier in the PUD process. So this would rezone the property as the city clerk treasurer has indicated. This is on your agenda for a public hearing and first reading tonight. And Plan Commission did recommend approval 6-0.
Thank you. At this time, the public hearing is now open. Would the clerk treasurer please provide any public input received?
The office did not receive any written comment on this item.
Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or oppose, please come forward? Final call. Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or oppose, please come forward at this time? The public hearing is now closed. This is a first reading. Can I please have a motion to lay over this item? Is there a motion?
Nancy Forbeck, I so move.
Moved by Councilor Forbeck. Is there a second?
Second, Counselor Blakely.
Second by Councilor Blakely. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Blakely.
Aye.
Counselor Forbeck.
Aye.
Counselor Keys.
Aye.
Counselor Levy.
Aye.
Counselor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item 4C is consideration of Resolution 2020-153, approving a conditional use permit to allow a first floor office use in a CBD 1 Central Business District Core Zoning District for the property located at 557 East Grand Avenue.
At this time, our Community Development Director, Julie Christensen, will provide us with a report.
This property contains a one-story, 5,000 square foot building with a small paved area. The previous tenant was Beloit Sports Center and Thorns Golf Carts. So the applicant would like to use the first floor of the building as office and event space. A conditional use permit is required for offices on the ground level because we were encouraging retail uses on the ground floor. So included in your packet is some architectural drawings that were done showing what they're planning to do in this space. They are not planning to use the paved area for parking as it does not meet the code standards for parking. Also included in the packet is a floor plan which shows you that the indoor farmers market is going to be in the front with some offices in the back and a conference room, and then the fenced in area is going to be used for storage of the van. Plan Commission did review this at their last meeting, and they did recommend approval subject to the conditions which are listed in the resolution which is before you tonight. The conditions are that this conditional use permit authorizes the ground floor in the building located at 557 East Grand Avenue as office space. All improvements and repairs to the exterior of the building must be in accordance with the Downtown Beloit Association guidelines in order to promote an attractive Main Street environment. And then our standard condition about major changes coming back through this public process, and minor changes to be approved can be approved administratively by staff. And then the resolution goes on to say, be it further resolved that the applicant is formally advised of the following additional ordinance requirements. An architectural review certificate must be obtained from the city's Planning and Building Services Division before any proposed exterior changes are made. All alterations shall comply with the ground floor transparency requirements for property zoned Central Business District 1 and the design guidelines published by the DBA. All renovations to the space require a building permit and shall comply with the International Building Code and the Americans with Disabilities Act. The maximum occupancy of the building shall be determined by the building official prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the building and shall be posted accordingly. The preliminary maximum occupancy has been determined to be 50 persons. In accordance with section 2-506 of the zoning ordinance, the applicant shall have 12 months from the date of conditional use permit issuance to complete construction and commence use of the offices, or the conditional use permit shall lapse and be of no further effect. And Plan Commission did review this at their last meeting and did recommend approval. And there was some discussion about the sign showed in the rendering, and that is, it looks a little odd on the rendering, but it's actually where the sign is now. So it wasn't some new design that DBA was putting forward. They were just proposing to reuse the existing sign face.
Thank you for the information, Julie. At this time, the public hearing is open. Would the clerk treasurer please provide any public input received?
There was no written input on this item.
Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or oppose please come forward? Final call. Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or oppose please come forward at this time? The public hearing is now closed. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Counselor Keys, so move.
Moved by
Second by
Counselor
Levy.
Keyes, seconded by Counselor Levy. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Counselor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion? Counselor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I don't, although I have to say that I'm thrilled about having maybe a permanent place for a winter farmer's market. I just think this is another great step ahead. Thank you.
Counselor Keyes, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I do have a question about the parking. Given the parking lot is not to code, could Julie speak towards the plan with parking, and just given that the use might be for, and I'm excited too, for the farmer's market, how we're going to meet the parking, how they're going to meet the parking needs and comply with handicap parking requirements and needs for that building.
Properties that are zoned Central Business District aren't required. There are no off-street parking requirements because the theory behind it is that we have city parking lots downtown, and so we provide the parking. So similar to when the outdoor farmers market is, there are a number of parking lots that customers can use. And so that's kind of how the Central Business District zoning is the expectation is that the city's providing parking, there's on-street parking, and so each business is not required. So the businesses that do require parking just do it because they want to have their own specific parking. But there are no parking requirements for Central Business District zoned parcels.
Thank you for clarifying. No further questions or comments.
Counselor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Counselor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, once again, at the Plan Commission meeting, all my questions were answered. This is a great move forward for the DBA, so that's all.
Okay. Counselor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Okay. At this time, there's a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Blakely.
Aye.
Counselor Forbeck.
Aye.
Counselor Keyes.
Aye.
Counselor Levy.
Aye.
Counselor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item 4D, consideration of resolution 2020-154 approving a conditional use permit to allow an outdoor seating area in a C1 office district for the property located at 1545 Prairie Avenue.
Community Development Director Julie Christensen will provide us with another overview.
This building is currently vacant, but was most previously used as Paragon Printing and a dog accessory business whose name I cannot remember. In addition, was demolished in the past year, so and the remaining building is 2,480 square feet. If you look at the air photo, you can see that a building once encroached into the right-of-way, the railroad right-of-way, but that addition is gone now. And what they're proposing to do is they are proposing to move Johnny's Cafe to this location. They were currently located in the Shapka Plaza. And then they are proposing to do a major rehab. So if you look in here, you'll see the site plan and there's some renderings showing what the building will look like. So it is a major improvement, and as part of this project, they're proposing to construct a 330 square foot outdoor seating area behind the building, and it would just serve as seating for patrons, and that requires a conditional use permit. The zoning ordinance states that the outdoor seating areas are allowed only if reviewed and approved in accordance with the conditional use permit. So Planning Commission reviewed this item on September 9th and voted unanimously 6-0 to recommend approval, subject to the conditions which are listed in the resolution that's before you tonight, which is that this conditional use permit authorizes the outdoor seating area as shown in the application attachment A. Music may not be played in the outdoor seating area after 10 p.m. And then our standard condition about major changes coming back through this public process and minor changes being approved administratively. And then be it further resolved that the applicant is advised of the following ordinance requirements. Before constructing the outdoor seating area, the applicant shall obtain an architectural review certificate and a building permit. The maximum capacity of the outdoor seating area shall be determined by the building official prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the building and shall be posted accordingly. And then the applicant shall have 12 months from the date of the conditional use issuance to complete construction and commence use of the outdoor seating area, or the conditional use shall lapse and be of no further effect. And Plan Commission did recommend approval, 6-0. And I think this is a nice improvement to this building. It's nice to see existing businesses continue to invest in our community.
Thank you, Julie. At this time, the public hearing is open. Would the clerk treasurer please provide any public input received?
There were no written comments to this item.
Okay. Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposed, please come forward? Final call. Would anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposed, please come forward at this time? The public hearing is now closed. Can I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
This is Counselor Blakely. I so move.
Moved by Counselor Blakely, seconded by Counselor Prushel. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Counselor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I don't.
Counselor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, thank you.
Counselor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I do not, thank you.
Counselor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Julie, I'm looking at the parking of this. How many cars are allowed to park in that parking lot, and is that enough parking for the building? That's question number one. And then question number two is, did any of the neighbors say anything? Are they in favor? Are they opposed? Because I'm looking at it, and it's pretty much butted up right to a residential neighborhood. Do we have any feedback from the neighbors? Any complaints, or they're in favor of it? And do we have any concerns?
So the minimum off-street parking requirement is 11 parking spots, and the site plan is providing 13. We did not hear from any of the neighbors in the area, but there has been, this has been a commercial business before, so, I mean, and that, we put that condition in there about restricting music past 10 for that very reason, because it was a residential neighborhood, but we did not hear from any of the neighbors.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Prushel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Well, as usual, most of my questions were answered at the Plan Commission meeting and everything, but I will follow up on Kevin's question just to clarify. We contact the neighbors. Do we canvass? Do we contact the owners of the property, which may not be living there? Could you clarify that again, Julie, for people?
We send mailed notices to to the residents within, it's either 150 or 250 feet of the property, so it goes to the property owners.
Okay, so if it's rental property, the renters who actually occupy the buildings, the homes and stuff in the area, may or may not even be aware of this as far as the notification of that goes.
It's possible.
Julie, was there, just to piggyback off, Councilor Prussia, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think you're trying to ask the question too, was there any kind of public notice or?
Well, they received a mailed notice, so and we also published it in the paper. So, they got an individual mailed public notice delivered to them, plus there's a notice in the paper, plus I think a copy of the notice is on the website. And we send it to the property owners because we do not have the names of tenants. So the property owner is the one who has the investment in the neighborhood through his or her property. So that is how we have historically done that notice.
So we don't mail directly to the property address.
No.
We mail to the property owner's address, which may not be the same, of course.
Correct.
Okay. So I can see where sometimes people are confused by this process. Okay, thank you, that's all.
Councilor Prussia, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have any further questions?
I did, I guess you didn't hear me. I said, no, that's all.
Okay. All right. At this time, there is a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Blakely.
Aye.
Counselor Forbeck.
Aye.
Counselor Keys.
Aye.
Counselor Levy.
Aye.
Counselor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item 5 is public comment.
We have reached the point on the agenda for residents to speak to the council about issues that are coming before us or may come before us in the future. Council members may not act on any requests at this meeting, but may refer a speaker to staff for assistance. We ask that you please hold your comments to 3 minutes or less and refrain from personal attacks of any kind. Public comment is a courtesy, and we expect everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Speakers are asked to complete a public comment form or submit an email prior to the meeting. Madam Clerk, were there any public comments submitted prior to the meeting?
There were several, and I sorted them by topic, and so I will read them as they are coming through. These are all related to item 6I on the consent agenda. Dear City Councilors, my name is Ron Watson, Associate Professor of Political Science and Health and Society at Beloit College. I'm writing regarding the proposed consolidation of Wards 16, 17, and 18 and the subsequent elimination of First Congregation Church as a polling site ahead of the 2020 general election. As you know, this site is a primary voting location for Beloit College students, reflecting its geographic proximity to the campus and ease of access. Most students walk the short distance there. Given the deeply contentious and momentous nature of the upcoming election, as well as the present pandemic conditions, making carpooling and shuttles very unattractive options, the decision to introduce a polling site that is both less accessible and less known to a significant and young voting constituency represents a significant barrier to voting and is one of the most, and is one that must be considered very carefully before proceeding. If this issue is poll workers, I'm happy to make every effort to identify students to work the polls and to do so myself to ensure that First Congregation remains open for Ward 16 voting. Dear council members, from Dr. Ellen E. Joyce, Associate Professor and Chair of History at Beloit College. Item 6I on the Beloit City Council agenda tomorrow night calls for the consolidating of First Congregational Ward 16 polling place with the one at Todd School Wards 17 and 18. This is a 20-minute walk from the Beloit College campus and will place a significant burden on students who want to vote in person and who have always voted near campus at First Con. Please try to find a better solution to the clerk's office staffing problems that doesn't disenfranchise a large population of voters who mostly do not have cars. We can't use campus vans to shuttle them because there are severe COVID capacity limitations on those vans. Students are legally entitled to vote at the place where they attend college. They tend not to be terribly organized about ordering absentee ballots or planning in advance. Beloit College students are on especially tight schedules this semester due to our new mod system, and many will struggle to find an hour in the day to walk 20 minutes, stand in line, and walk back to campus. I'm very concerned that the city find a way to encourage young people to participate in the democratic process rather than hindering it. To whom it may concern, I worry that consolidating wards will disenfranchise voters in Ward 16. Please keep First Congregational open as a polling location. Highest regards, Joseph DeRozier, 1149 Eaton Avenue, Beloit. Please don't make it difficult for the college kids to vote by consolidating polling places. Many of them have no transportation options, and with COVID, it's more important than ever that they not be sharing rides or using public buses or what have you to get to the polling location. Safest if they can just walk to the regular polling location and keep their viruses to themselves. Thanks, Jenny Hoople, 1300 Strong Avenue, Beloit. Please vote no on the proposed consolidation of Todd's School Voting District with First Congregational Church Voting District. This would require all Beloit College students who wanted to vote, most of them who are on foot, to walk an extra 20 minutes in unpredictable weather in order to cast their ballot. Although this is not outright disenfranchisement, it is certainly a stumbling block that would reduce the number of students voting. Greg Wilson, Beloit. I would like to address an item that is on the City Council agenda for today, the consolidation of the First Congregational Ward 16 polling location with one at Todd School, Wards 17 and 18. This is not a good option for Beloit College students as it is a 20-minute walk from campus and will place a significant burden on students who want to vote in person. I kindly request that members of the council consider finding a better solution to their staffing problems that doesn't disenfranchise a larger population of voters who mostly do not have cars. We can't use campus vans to shuttle them because there are severe COVID capacity limitations on those vans. Beloit College has been following strict protocols in regards to COVID-19, and we would like to continue to do that for our students in regards to the upcoming election. Daksha Howard, Program Coordinator, Office of Student Success, Equity, and Community. Thank you for taking my comments. There have been unprecedented barriers to voting due to COVID-19, and I am sad to see that the City Council is considering shutting down one of the polling locations. Since so many people have limited time, limited transportation, and may have additional limitations to voting, I think it is critical that we have all polling places open on Election Day. I think the city has already done a great job working with the school district to make sure that all of the elementary school polling places are open, and I hope that the council will consider applying the same enthusiasm and problem solving to First Congregational Church site. If there's absolutely no conceivable way to keep the spot open, I hope the city would consider hosting lengthy in-person voting sites there ahead of Election Day so that people could have some comparable access to vote in their voting area. Thank you for your hard work making our city safe and effective, and I hope a good solution can be found. Megan Miller, 1811 Vista Drive, Beloit. The next group of comments are on item 6J on your consent agenda. My name is Sheila Burton and I reside at 2600 East Ridge Road. It was brought to my attention that the city wants to apply for stimulus funds, a grant of over $68,000 to make up for money lost due to COVID. As a citizen of Beloit and one who chose to relocate our family here 3 years ago because the rebirth of downtown was experiencing the charm, the small town feel, and the welcoming and happy atmosphere of its residents, I am very disheartened and concerned about the city wanting to apply for these stimulus funds. I'm aware that these marketing funds come with contingencies for use. Yes, they're supposed to be used to bring back tourism and was lost due to COVID, but they cannot be used to advertise normal activities to bring lost tourism dollars back to the community. It is my understanding that if these funds are taken and the city is using them to promote our beautiful new baseball stadium next summer, promotional materials would have to incorporate safety measures tied to COVID. There are strings attached to use these dollars. The city would have to continue to incorporate COVID into its advertising for future events located within our city, showing our city is continuing to follow COVID response measures for safety. This means advertising can continue to include the use of face coverings, social distancing, limited attendance for attraction or events, limited seating in our amazing eateries, continued suppression of our local businesses and citizens. And if that isn't bad enough, it is my understanding these funds won't even be available for use until next spring, summer of 2021. Logic leads me to believe that this result in our lovely city continuing to keep COVID in the forefront of everyone's attention well into next year. That is beyond unacceptable. This is not free money for the betterment of our city. It has many COVID strings attached to it that will continue to depress our city. I would like the City Council to provide the citizens of Beloit with hard scientific facts that show us how these types of restriction will still need to be required 9+ months from now before you decide this money is justified. I feel citizens would like to see examples of what tourism materials purchased using this money would look like. Do you have a crystal ball that allows you to see into the future? How would you just start planning for the city's future and begin planning events again? The tourists will come, the people will show up. They do not want to see all these reminders, we are all in this together, and mask up, and 6 for safety. They want normalcy. I believe if the city starts to look ahead and plans for the future like it should, tourism next year will be through the roof for us because we have so much to offer as a tourist destination, especially with the opening of our new stadium and all the events we can hold there besides just baseball. We do not need these COVID funds. Finally, I just want to share that I am sad to see the decline of small town charm and the happy smiling citizens I used to see around town when we relocated here. To apply for these funds and continue to keep COVID in the front of your citizens well into the future with no definite end date in sight is nothing but depressing, and I personally feel will do the opposite of bringing back lots of tourism dollars in the area. Lift these restrictions on our amazing small town businesses. Look ahead, start planning amazing future events. Give your community hope and something to look forward to. Trust your citizens to make the best decisions for themselves in regard to their health and safety, and watch Beloit rise up and shine better than ever before. Sheila K. Burton. Dear Councilors and City Manager, I'm writing to oppose item 6J on the agenda, which authorizes the City Manager to apply for $68,000 Wisconsin Department of Tourism Wisconsin Travel Stimulus Grants to help the downtown business area recover from COVID-related losses in 2020. After researching the details of the travel stimulus grant, it appears that the grant has many strings attached and is basically money that has to be used to continue the COVID narrative into 2021. Keep in mind that nobody knows what COVID situation will be. Maybe we will have herd immunity. Maybe there will be a vaccine. Maybe COVID deaths will remain as flat as they have been since June. Who knows? So why would you take money that forces you to push that narrative into next year? According to the grant terms, it specifies that monies cannot be used for traditional marketing to bring people back to downtown. The money can, however, be used for what it is literally called COVID-19 response messaging and imagery. Some examples of what the money can be used for include enhanced screening measures at events, demonstrating the need for visitor attenders to utilize face coverings, follow social distancing guidelines, wash hands often and thoroughly, limit attendance, close contact when visiting attractions, attending events, PPE, testing cost. People love downtown's Beloit, myself included. Taking brag money to push the fear narrative will only serve to hurt our beautiful downtown more. I also demand to see the science behind the closures of the events that you state are requiring you to apply for this grant. Easter extravaganza, spring wine walk, street dance, Oktoberfest, and a Halloween parade all canceled. Who's making you cancel these events? Why were they canceled? Where is the science? Were any of the Beloit COVID deaths linked to an event? Has anyone actually been ill from attending an event? Perhaps we should be fighting to open events rather than looking for a grant with more strings attached. And enticing as $68,000 may seem, please do the right thing and just say no. Cheryl Hengeveld, Beloit resident. Good evening. My name is Christine Raleigh and I'm a resident of Beloit. Thank you for giving the public chance to participate in city council meetings through the ability to give public comments and for holding these meetings in person. I'd love to see all members of the council present at these meetings again. I know I speak for myself and others in the community when I say this, considering that COVID-19 prevention measures in place currently. Hopefully the public can see this happen soon. Please consider returning Beloit City Council meetings back to completely in-person format. Concerning this evening's agenda, I would like to comment on item 6J. After reading through various documents explaining the grant, I see the money is in part intended to help cover the cost to purchase things such as masks, tests, and signage about COVID-19 prevention measures. I'm concerned about this grant for the following reasons. It is stated that the final report is due February 2021. Does this mean the process is finalized at that time and the money will wait to be issued until February? If so, this would seem to insinuate mask and physical distancing measures will be required even 5 months from now, possibly into next spring. Thankfully, the COVID-19 virus has shown to be extremely less deadly and harmful as originally feared in the beginning of the pandemic. The facts concerning death and hospitalizations do not seem to merit these practices now, let alone 5 months from now and beyond. Are these funds contingent upon the Downtown Beloit Association requiring these preventative measures during events now through next February and possibly next spring? I couldn't find information clarifying this. I would like to know if this grant requires organizations to uphold these in order to receive the money. Are events being canceled due to recommendations by your county health department? I would like to see the science evaluated that determine decisions like that. Current data seems to suggest we are capable of holding, not canceling events. I'm referring to data reflecting deaths and hospitalizations of our city, state, and country's population. I'm very supportive of helping our community thrive. I'm opposed to anything that is contingent on requiring mask and physical distancing for times well into the future. We are against the city of Beloit requesting grant funds with strings attached, and that's exactly what asking for the $68,000 in stimulus funds from the CARES Act will get us. It isn't free money to help us offset the money lost due to COVID-19 this year. Rather, this money won't be available until next summer. It's actually a bribe because this money is not to be used to promote normal tourism and encourage travel to our city, but to promote further restrictions on the normal activities blamed on COVID-19 that will force us to continue on into next summer. Those restrictions include, but are not limited to, face covering, social distancing, limiting attendance, testing, and partnering with programs such as Governor Evers' We're All In, which assumes all Wisconsin citizens agree with the restrictions, which is simply not true. Many don't agree and certainly don't want to be forced on us another year when there is no science backing up the value of all the restrictions being placed on us now. Robert and Marianne Svem, 1131 Risher Street, City of Beloit. I'll have a few more. I'm sorry.
Okay.
These items did not appear to have items on the agenda, but they were comments received nonetheless. Judy Robeson, please extend the restrictions, Rock County, and uptick again. Thank you and be well. Martha Dunnigan, to Beloit City Council, it's absolutely necessary that you extend the mask mandate for Beloit. And Susan Adams says, if you were considering lifting any restrictions or whatever for the COVID-19, please do not. I was downtown doing census 2 days ago. I walked by trucked and it seemed very nice, all open air. I observed very few, if any, wearing masks, and I'm sure they were not drinking all of the time. Anyway, I walked toward State Street and sat on a bench outside halfway down the block when I heard the happy birthday song sung at the top of people's lungs from the very establishment. It would be well nigh impossible for a bar to stop such behavior without some help from the city. The waitstaff can use the city prohibitions as an excuse when they hopefully ask people not to sing or yell, especially without masks. Singing is not recommended even outside, and that was definitely not a safe practice. Let's not make it even more lax. And the last one, we are asking the City Water Resources Department to not implement this increase in our water rates. This information just recently revealed is shocking. Our rates are high enough now. This increase is supposedly caused by a need to improve and expand the facilities and equipment we have now, but our residential numbers have not grown, so the need must be due to added business growth. Beloit citizens should not be forced to pay for the improvements when we will see no benefit. Our property taxes will not go down because of this, so we would only see the increase, and that is just not right. Stop raising our water and sewer rates and stop tacking on all the added fees and taxes. Enough. Robert and Mary Ann Svem, City of Beloit residents. And of course, there was a proposed rate increase graphic with that public comment. And that concludes all of the written comment that was received for this evening's public comment.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that submitted a form to address the council this evening? Are there any members of the public that did not sign up but wish to address the council this evening? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Sorry, I'm getting my notes here real quick.
That's fine.
My name is Matt Hopkins. I reside at 604 Pleasant Street here in Beloit. I would like to bring to the council's attention, first off, I want to say outright that I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement everywhere. I believe that the jobs that they are asked to do are monumental at times, and they make split-second decisions that cannot be taken back, and they deserve all the accolades they can possibly get. I do want to bring to your attention the events that happened on Riverside Boulevard right in front of ABC on Saturday evening. Saturday evening I was driving north to Janesville at about 6:40 in the evening, and there was a large crowd of people starting to gather, like there was a parade about to happen. My wife and I were a little inquisitive about it. We didn't see any signage about it. We didn't hear anything about it, but there was, well over 150 people at that time at 6:40. At 9:07, when I came back through town, going down that same road, there was a massive group of people that had collected, numbering in the hundreds, people directly right up against the streets, and there was basically a drag strip contest going on. And I contacted Rock County Non-Emergency and asked if they're aware of anything that was happening, and they were not. I said, well, you guys need to get somebody down here. It needs to be police here soon. It'll be fire and ambulance later. And from what I understand, it was exactly that. I am curious on how, in the course of 2.5 hours, that an event escalated that was what seemed to be not planned and not permitted in any way, shape, or form, was allowed to get to that point. I know you guys won't have answers this evening, but I think that really needs to get looked into. I believe that's part of a larger problem of excessive noise and speed on Pleasant Street and Riverside. We're newer residents there. We expected, living on a road, that would be, we'd hear some road noise, but I mean, we can't sleep with our windows open at night. It's absolutely impossible. There is for sure excessive speeding happening throughout the evenings, throughout the weekend, and if somehow that could be curtailed, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you for that. Can you please leave your name and address with the clerk treasurer on a form?
I certainly will.
Did he?
Hopkins, Matt. 604 Pleasant.
You got it. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public wishing to address the council this evening? If so, please come forward at this time. Final call, would any other members of the public wish to address the council this evening? If not, the public comment is now closed. And before I begin with the next thing, I just want to say thank you to everyone that emailed us with their input and concerns, and for the gentleman that came out tonight. We do appreciate it, and we do take that into consideration. So thank you.
Item 6, under the consent agenda, all items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda.
Would any counselor like anything removed from the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam President. This is Councilor Blakely.
And which item would you like removed, Counselor Blakely?
I would like item 6I removed from the consent agenda for individual consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Would any counselor like anything else removed from the consent agenda? Can I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including 6A through 6H and 6J? Is there a motion?
Nancy Forback, I so move.
Moved by Counselor Forbeck. Is there a second?
Counselor Keys will second.
Seconded by Counselor Keys. At this time, there is a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion? I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councilor Blakely.
Aye.
Councilor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councilor Keys.
Aye.
Councilor Levy. I'll come back. Councilor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
And Councilor Levy. Councilor Levy, can you hear us? We can confirm his vote by text.
He's on the line. He was
He is on
having
the
some
line.
difficulty hearing.
Okay.
Give him a couple
Let's
minutes.
just move on without
Okay.
his vote on that.
So we'll move forward. Is there a motion to approve item 6I?
This is Nancy Forbeck, and I wonder if we could have some discussion on that.
We will. We're
We need a
gonna,
motion first.
we're gonna do the motion and then we
I'll
will
make
do
that
that.
motion.
Who seconded that?
I will second it.
Okay.
Councilor Blakely.
All right, so we had a first by Counselor Forbeck, seconded by
If
Counselor
Nancy
Blakely.
wasn't- Sorry.
Okay, for item 6I, we
I'll
have
second the
a
motion.
motion by Counselor Forbeck, a second by Counselor Blakely. At this time, we have a motion and a second to approve 6I. So before we begin, we'll have a report from our city manager. I'll call Lori Luther to come to speak at this time.
I have some introductory comments, and then I would like to request that the city clerk treasurer provide some additional background information as well. First and foremost, I want to let the public know, and the council, that we strongly recommend all voters request absentee ballots. If you have any concerns about mailing in your ballot, you also have the option of hand delivering your ballot and placing it in the drop box at City Hall. There is a recent judge's decision as of today that is likely to be appealed. And I wanted to point out that regardless if that judge's decision to provide additional time for absentee ballots to be mailed in, our staff is still obligated to count every absentee ballot in our possession on election night. So I would recommend that you not consider that particular decision one way or the other in deliberating on this issue tonight. I want to clarify one point from the staff report, that this is not primarily a financial issue. The issue is a supply and demand problem in regard to the equipment that is needed to count ballots. We have made efforts to obtain additional equipment ourselves. They have been placed on back order and are virtually impossible to receive. We are working in partnership with area agencies and are borrowing equipment to the extent that that is possible in order to ensure the most efficient election possible. There is no intent to provide any disadvantage or inconvenience to any voter. Staff is providing you with a scenario that in our judgment is the best possible solution given a variety of issues that are largely outside of our control. We will follow whatever guidance that the council approves, but we would point out that a final decision must be made no later than October 3rd of this year, and the next regularly scheduled meeting is on October 5th. A special meeting could be held if a decision cannot be reached this evening. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Clerk Treasurer Stotler to provide some additional information about why this proposal was brought forward, and then either of us or others can respond to any questions that may remain when the council president calls on each individual.
Thank you, City Manager Luther. Polling place establishment is established by you, the governing body, at least 30 days before any election. These locations must be accessible to all individuals with disabilities, and the municipal clerk must certify to the Wisconsin Election Commission that all of these polling places used within the municipality satisfy the accessibility requirements established by the Wisconsin Election Commission. So you have already established the 9 in place. All electors within a ward must vote at the same polling place. However, a single polling place can serve the electors of more than one ward. When 2 or more wards are combined for voting purposes at a single polling place, the governing body must do so by resolution at least 30 days before any election. That is why I'm bringing this resolution before you this evening. A presidential and fall general election is scheduled for November 3rd. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a critical impact on many aspects of election administration since its onset. For the November 3rd election, our office anticipates a record number of absentee ballots to be cast and counted at our Municipal Board of Absentee Canvassers here at City Hall on Election Day. This will require the proper election equipment to get them counted in that one day. The clerk treasurer has secured tabulators from neighboring municipalities to assist with this task, but requires 1 additional tabulator and another set of electronic poll books known as Badger books to ensure that all votes are tallied timely on election night. In order to place vital equipment in the polling places that will best serve us, we're recommending the use of 8 of our 9 polling locations and consolidating Ward 16 with 17 and 18. The benefit of consolidating will be the ability to use that equipment and the resources from Ward 16 at City Hall to improve the time needed to process an anticipated 6,000 absentee ballots. The most we have ever counted here in the city is 3,052. That includes the DS200 tabulators, badger books, and personnel originally slated for First Congregational to work at City Hall. I was asked about what the financial savings, and while this was not a financial decision, the savings range between $3,000 and $6,000, depending on the need for additional PPE preparations at all locations. The decision examined many factors in trying to come to this decision. Number one, in the past 4 federal elections in November, Ward 16 had the lowest turnout percentage of eligible and registered voters. As the student enrollment changes, so does registered voter numbers in that ward. Number 2, because of COVID-19, city staff and First Congregational staff has serious reservations about using the basement for voting and would need to move operations to the first floor, creating a less than desirable floor plan. Part of that plan involves moving people in through the sanctuary to get to the place where they would cast their ballot. It is doable if required. Number 3, this ward is the most likely to have temporary residents who register in their hometown and vote by absentee ballot in their hometown and state. Number 4, the distance to Todd Elementary is not prohibitive and aligns with many other distances for residents from their home address to their polling location. And I believe City Attorney Beth has the city ward map up for you to see, counselors, and I have it up here in the council chambers. The circles represent the 9 standing polling locations. And as you can see, people in the bottom half of 17, which is the dark blue to the right of the river, would go even further to get to their home polling place than the Ward 16 consolidated students would have to go, or consolidated voters would have to go to get to that. There's many different areas that have further distances to go, and a prime example would be Wards 23 and 24 at Central Christian. Covers a lot of territory and a lot of necessity to accommodate people the best we can. Number 5, all the polling places already have at least 3 wards in them. And so combining 16 with 17 and 18 balances the 3 wards per location citywide. One final point of interest is that I've compared the overall number of polling places with 8 other communities of similar size. And we have between 2 and 7 more locations than those other 8 communities. In lean times during a global pandemic, staff is asking for the difficult decision to proceed under the current circumstances with 8 polling places as presented. Approving Resolution 2020-162 moves ahead with the consolidation. Not approving Resolution 2020-162 and taking no further action simply reverts the city to having the 9 previously approved polling locations on November 3rd with a central count facility here at City Hall. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Clerk Sattler. Now I will take questions and discussions from each counselor, beginning with Vice President Anderson. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Just a couple comments. First off, Clerk Stotler, I think we all appreciate all the work you're doing. We know this is definitely not easy in a normal election, but then to do it on top of a pandemic, I can't imagine what you're dealing with and how stressful that can be. I just had a question about the possibility of doing something in that college neighborhood. I think our concern is that a lot of those students do not drive, and that is a pretty good walk to Todd. It's not too ridiculous, but it would be a challenge. Is there anything we can do ahead of Election Day, like an absentee site there, or is there something that prohibits us from doing that?
So we are planning, we're required actually to offer in-person absentee voting here at City Hall, starting on October 20th. And we will run October 20th through October 30th here at City Hall. We are expecting to see some pretty heavy in-person voting numbers. We've actually anticipated to see and staffed for 250 to 300 people per day here. And I had already begun working with some of the college staff, Daksha Howard, and a couple of the other student body to start talking about having groups come here during those times so that outside of class they had upwards of 9 different days that they could come here to City Hall and cast a ballot in person.
Any further questions or comments? Vice President Anderson?
Yeah, just to follow up, is there any capabilities of doing a day of absentee voting on campus, or is that too much logistical planning?
I think I would need more than 5 seconds to think that.
But I didn't know if that was something that we thought about doing or could do, or we could maybe have a conversation about.
I think that is something that could merit a conversation. I think it merits some conversation. Is it legal to do so between October 20th and October 30th? Yes. Is it logistically possible with the staff and the equipment and whatnot that we have? I'm not sure, and I don't want to commit to that. But it's certainly worth that conversation to see if we can make something like that happen.
If I may.
Can we have City Manager Luther to follow up on that, please?
Thank you. I simply wanted to state that it may be legally permissible. None of the communities that I have worked for in well over 20 years have done so to the best of my knowledge, and security is the primary concern for having an off-site location. We would be happy to look into the feasibility, but I would not want to commit, certainly at this point, without fully understanding what would be required to ensure the safety and security of that process, of the volunteers, and of the ballots themselves.
Any other further questions?
Yeah, just one more and then I'll stop talking.
Okay.
I think that us looking into that would be a worthwhile venture, and I'm not going to make a motion or anything at this point to let everybody else get through with their comments, but it almost seems like it might be worth waiting closer to that deadline just to see if it's logistically possible, and then if it's not, then we just need to move forward and go with the 8th. But I think this might be the way to kind of find a middle ground where it's not too burdensome on staff, but also giving us a chance to be accommodating to the college students here in Beloit.
Thank you, Vice President Anderson. Next, Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Yes. I remember the slow old days of being a Beloit College student and having to walk everywhere in town. So I certainly empathize with the students who do not have cars here. I was all for a month before consideration and a little study. I was going to recommend that we vote this down, this resolution, and let the Congregational Church go ahead as a polling place. Before I realized that it is not about the money needed for it, but it is about, in this time of pandemic and quarantining and so on, and the huge amount of absentee voting that is expected, that we will not have the necessary machinery to count all of the additional absentee ballots coming in. So the machinery, I think it was City Manager Luther who explained, or perhaps it was Clerk Treasurer Statler. Forgive me for not having the right person on this. Someone explained that indeed there's a waiting list for the machinery that would be required. And I don't like to make it more difficult for someone to vote, but I do urge all Beloit College students and anyone else who can to vote absentee ahead of time. You can go to My Vote Wisconsin online, and it will help you learn whether you are a registered voter. Once you are registered, you can request your absentee ballot from them, and they make that process very easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Blakely. Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Just, I guess, a few comments. I'm so glad, and I imagine that everybody here can understand through this discussion how we are very aware we want our Beloit College kids to be able to vote as easily as they can. And I think between our two Lories, we have been told about all the intricacies that are going on right now with trying to make this possible. But I'm glad that Lori Stotler brought up about this in-person absentee ballot. The kids could come down. They can walk down to City Hall, which is closer, and vote there on hopefully some good days of those 10 days where they'll be able to vote. So I'm very encouraged by that, and in any way any of us could be helpful in getting students to vote, we're all standing behind them. But I understand now much better why we have reduced by one our voting places. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Forbeck. Councilor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Yes, I do. First, thank you to all staff for your hard work. This is unprecedented times, and the election planning is very challenging. As far as helping with transportation, my first question, has there been any discussion on, because as mentioned, the college students shuttle would be rendered relatively ineffective for using to help getting back and forth from the polls. And many students and potentially other residents too of Ward 16 may not have transportation. So are there any other, has the city thought or discussed of any other measures?
City Manager Luther, can you please respond to that question?
So the clerk treasurer did reach out to our transit department to ask if there was any possibility of providing special transportation. And unfortunately, we are not legally permitted to provide a bus that could be considered a charter in order to provide a special route on that day. That is due to the restrictions of the purchase of our federal buses with federal dollars, regardless of the local match that is required. So we are not able to provide that particular resource on that day. We are still evaluating if other potential might exist. However, we share some of the same concerns about smaller vehicles being used for transportation due to COVID-19. So as already mentioned, I believe the best alternative for those who are concerned about having access to Todd Elementary on Election Day are the options to either mail in an absentee ballot, drop off an absentee ballot, or vote in person at City Hall. I'm going to ask the clerk treasurer to repeat those dates where that will be an opportunity, because I'm afraid I will misspeak on those dates.
Sure. So it's going to start on Tuesday, October 20th, here at City Hall, and it will run through Friday, October 30th, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. If a need is something that we decide exists to operate on, say, Saturday, October 24th, or Saturday, October 31st, to accommodate more students, I would even be willing to add a day and staff for that as well. And I would be willing to even stay open a little later on a couple of days. I have not published my in-person absentee notice yet, so if, you know, the extension of hours is a good middle ground, I'm happy to increase those accommodations. October 20th to October 30th, currently Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but definitely willing to expand if the need exists.
Thank you for those answers and for helping problem solve. I did want to just comment, when looking at comparing Ward 16 to Wards 23 and 24, all of those people, or most of those people likely do have transportation via their individual vehicles. And Todd is not very far from the college, a 20-minute walk, but on November 3rd, it does start to get dark around 4:45, and just depending on their schedules that are now very condensed and intense, they might be limited to after class time, which then could put them in the dark. And just being a female that likes to run and walk outside a lot, just within this country in general, that's just a consideration as far as a safety piece, with expecting students to walk in the dark to a polling place, which there are alternatives that we're highly encouraging, but as the professor, some people may be waiting until election day. I did look at, so there was a comment on the percent of voter being low of registered voters in that ward, and I did want to comment that I did see that even the percent of registered voters that voted was low. The total number of voters within Ward 16 is pretty high. So in 2012 there was 911, in 2016 there were 786 voters, and for an individual ward that is amongst the highest. So that is has a lot of voters, even though the percent is lower. So my second question is there any possible way to have that tabulator at City Hall and still have Central Christian open as a polling place?
So I had a brief discussion with Eric, my boss, a little bit earlier, and we did discuss if we were to keep First Cong open and have it strictly paper poll books and paper registrations. That is the highest thing that happens at First Cong, is voter registration on election day, because of the changeover of the student body. The paper poll book would make things run very, very slow there, but we are required, because we're a city over 35,000, to have tabulators in every single location. So we would need to go down one tabulator and try to work the ones here at City Hall harder to get them all in. Does that answer your question?
That does.
Okay.
Counselor Keys, do you have any further questions or discussion on the motion?
these are unprecedented times and challenges with the election, and I'm open to the discussion for creative solutions, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Excuse me, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead with your question.
This is something that I've been struggling with also, about closing this one down. Thank you to Lori for information, both Loris, talking with them. And kind of like with Councilor Keys, looking at the numbers that she recited in that area, that seems like a lot of voters that we would be trying to push over to another location. And I know we're talking about college kids, which is important as well, but my thought is, do we have a lot of senior citizens in that area who may have a hard time getting over to Todd as well to vote without transportation? I know we are in unprecedented times, and I get that, but as much emphasis is being put on this election and things that's been going on in the news where people are afraid to mail in their absentee ballots because, well, is it going to get there in time? So you hear that stuff on the news, so people might say, well, I don't want to do absentee. I want to make sure I go to the polls and make sure that my vote gets counted, and I've heard people say that. I just think that we would get more criticism in moving this poll at this time. Because it just seems as though that the heightency of the election, especially this election, is just out there, that I just have this feeling that if we decide that we want to move this, I mean, it could come back to slap us in the face. You know, college students can say, well, they didn't want us to vote. We know that that's not true. But is that something that we're willing to face? I am just really uncomfortable with this, moving forward with this. So the question that I have, and I think I heard bits and pieces of the answer before, so if this gets voted down, then what?
City Manager Luther, can you please answer that question?
Yes, so if the consolidation is not approved this evening, then the 9 polling sites that are already approved on record would move forward, and staff would have to figure out a way to make it happen.
Okay, yeah, I'm just, so, Madam City Clerk, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead, Councilor Levy.
Is it the issue here, the machines, the poll workers, combination of both, the absentee ballots need to be counted, that we need to make sure we get those counted in a certain amount of time. I hear today that they passed, and it could be appealed or whatever, but they just passed, and they're going to allow, 5 days to count the absentee ballots after the election. That was on the 5 o'clock news. So I'm not comfortable. I guess I'm just not comfortable with moving it.
Before I hand it over to Clerk Treasurer Stotler, I just want to reiterate 2 points. Regardless of the decision that the judge made today, that only has to do with when an absentee ballot can be received after Election Day. We would still be required under current guidance or law to count every absentee ballot that is in our possession on November 3rd. Given the number of ballots that we have already received and anticipate receiving, we can't accommodate the quick tabulation of those ballots without more equipment, and we can't get more equipment because it's all been back ordered. So if the decision is to keep the 9 polling places, we will follow the law, but I can't tell you how long it may take in order to count those ballots on election night. Whether or not the judge's decision is upheld or appealed That has to do with counting ballots that are received after Election Day. So I just wanted to try and clarify that point.
Thank you, City Manager Luther. I had something to ask, but I'll just wait. Council Levy, did you have anything else to add as far as a question or further discussion?
Well, I'm trying to see if Lori, the city clerk answered the question with the machinery, the poll workers. Is it a combination of everything, or what's?
It really is, Counselor Levy. It's trying to create the perfect scenario so that we can accommodate at the most convenient, and I hesitate to, what we're doing right now is we're creating an inconvenience for the students on campus. It is never our intent to ever disenfranchise any students, but yes, there is an inconvenience, but in the statistics that I shared with the council earlier, in 2016, we had 443 total votes at that location. And we know that student enrollment is down somewhat. And in 2018, we had 618 at the polls. I currently have 262 as of today absentee ballot requests on file. So in doing the math of what the historical student population is and the ability for Todd to take those numbers, the ability to have 3 wards per polling location and then still have enough equipment to manage 5 groups of 4 people who will start counting absentees at 7 a.m. on election day and will count steady until probably 10 o'clock at night to get the 5, 6, 7,000 that I'm anticipating to come in was all part of the discussion. And I hate to bring my boss into it, but we've spent many hours trying to figure out whether or not this is feasible to the terms of even spending money and having extra equipment after this election. And it just comes down to not being able to acquire the equipment that we would need because everybody in the country is up against this same wall. And also not having the equipment in the right locations. I feel really lucky that we've been able to acquire the Badger books, which is the electronic poll books, during a time of COVID that will allow us to have some pretty expedient time in the field and have registration happen on the fly. So it is kind of the perfect, trying to come up with the perfect recipe that's going to reach the most people with what we have. And city manager said it best. I'm happy to make whatever decision you decide tonight work. There will be, no matter what we decide, there will be some slowdowns. This is just the reality of it, but whatever you decide, there's going to be some slowdowns on either end. If we go all paper at First Cong with a tabulator, the students are going to wait longer than if they were to take they may spend 20 minutes standing in line versus walking to Todd, where we'd be able to help them with the equipment that we have. As long as everybody, fully understands the trade-offs that we would be making, we can make this work. I don't want to sound like I can't make it work. It's just not as, in all of the discussions we've had and with the county clerk and with the Wisconsin Election Commission, this was the best option that we are putting forward.
Thank you, Clerk Stotler. Council Levy, any further questions or discussion?
No.
Okay, Councilor Preschel.
Well, it's nice to finally get to talk. I understand the trouble you're facing here, Lori, and I think Clerk Stotler, I've worked a couple of elections, and as limited as it might have been, it's obvious that Todd could conceivably get a lot more traffic than it normally gets, and it already gets a lot of traffic, so that concerned me at first. What I have not heard mentioned is using City Hall as the polling place instead of the first con. You'll be there, you'll have the machines there, you'll have the staff there, the electors, the tabulators, they'll all be there counting absentee ballots. Can't we just use that as Ward 16 polling place? It's 3 blocks from the college, 2 blocks down the hill, 3 blocks down the hill and over through lighted city streets that are clearly marked and obvious, easy to traverse. Couldn't we just do that? And then we've got everything in the one place, and we can take that overflow, and we can really encourage people to vote absentee, in-person absentee, which I'll plan to do because I think that is probably the easiest thing as far as workload goes for you guys. Maybe I'm wrong. But, you know, and you've got that 10-day period, and perhaps that would be more than enough to get people out and promote that. It's not hard to promote it. And again, it's a simple 4-block walk from the campus, 3-block walk from First Con. I don't see any problem with that except the logistics of putting it on at City Hall. And maybe you can't do that. But I think all this discussion ahead of this is, I really understand it's very, very, very important that this count be done in a timely manner. We don't want to have to wait 4 days for the outcome of our absentee count. And we don't want a whole bunch of people wandering around in the stuffy old basement in a church. We need to do this the right way. And I just think that, you know, perhaps that's one alternative to look at. Maybe you guys discussed it already.
Thank you, Councilor Preschel. And I know you have another question, but City Manager Luther would just had one comment to add as well.
I appreciate the creative opportunities to try and problem solve this. I would be very uncomfortable making that decision this evening, however. We have secured the first floor of City Hall so that it is really not accessible to the remainder of the building. And given the new configuration of our first floor, I'm having difficulty envisioning how we would provide the proper spacing that we've committed to our volunteers and are able to accommodate at the other locations in regard to flow. So as voters would be entering the facility, and in case of inclement weather, I'm having difficulty envisioning on the fly how we would be able to appropriately space individuals, and we could not commingle the space that we need to count the absentee ballots with where live elections would have to be occurring. And I just don't believe that there is adequate space on the first floor under our current configuration. I think the concept is great. I agree that it is a logistics problem, and I'm simply not prepared to say with certainty that we could make that work at this point in time.
Thank you, City
Thank
Manager
Lori,
Luther.
'cause I understand that, and that's what I was hoping you would say, because I will support the measure as proposed, because I understand. I think the overriding thing we're trying to do here is to accommodate a timely count of the ballots, especially with the volume of absentee ballots expected. And I think with a high promotion of in-person absentee voting option ahead of the November 3rd, that I think this can work, and I think we should try it. And because this is an unprecedented circumstance that we must deal with as best we can, nothing is going, if anything, if we learned anything in the last 6 months, is that we're never going to please everybody. And there's no way we can accommodate all possibilities all the time. We have to make do with the best circumstances we have. And I think Lori Stotler has done a wonderful job managing now 2 elections in a time of just incredible pressures. So I would support this measure as proposed. I was hoping maybe that, you know, a consolidation to the City Hall would be acceptable if possible, but considering it's November, probably not a good idea. So anyway, that's where I stand, and I'll end my comments.
Did you have any other, or are you going to end it? Okay. Thank you, Councilor Preschel. I just want to say thank you, Lori Stotler and the staff for putting this together. And that was one of my main questions, the ones that some of the other councilors had with the transportation. But I think we really want to understand that we want to ensure that everyone can vote, but we also want to make sure that those votes are counted. So I would like to see, as far as my comments, that we just continue to emphasize the voting and coordinating efforts with the Beloit College students and Beloit College. So that's all I have to say. But thank you so much for that hard work. And we want to do something that we don't want to be, how do I say, have shortfalls. We want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and that we're making every effort to make sure that people are voting, and again, that their votes will be counted. With that said, at this time, we have a motion.
Madam President, may I just comment in response to Councilor Preschel just mentioned that if it would be a first con, it would be in the basement. I just want to clarify that it's my understanding that if it did remain a polling place at first con, it would be the first floor. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is the desire of the staff at First Con. And after discussing with management, my desire as well, because of the safety measures and the traffic flow under our current health situation.
Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions or discussion from any other counselors before I move forward at this time?
Madam President, Vice President Anderson.
Go ahead, Vice President Anderson.
Lori, you said the deadline that we have to have this decision made was the 3rd of October, correct?
It was the 2nd. Can you clarify, Clerk Stotler?
It has to be done 30 days before the election. So if I'm backing that up, I believe that it would be October 2nd. No, it'd be
Okay.
the 31 would be October 3rd, right?
Because I know some of the stuff that we're floating as compromises or suggestions. Obviously, we're not going to get those tonight. I mean, that'd be impossible, and there's a lot of logistical questions. And if anyone else will support me, I would like to make a motion that we postpone this until the 1st of October, and we come back and maybe get some more questions answered about what would doing X, Y, and Z look like, and if it's feasible. And then if not, then we can just go with 8 polling places. But I just want to make sure we're absolutely comfortable with going with 8 polling places. And my feeling is that a lot of fellow council members have some reservations still, and I think just getting a couple more answers will help us feel comfortable making that decision. So,
Vice President Anderson, thank you for that comment, but I would like, if we could, just to have Clerk Stotler, can we have some clarification on the dates, please, so we know what we're working with, if that should occur?
So my understanding is that indeed October 3rd is the deadline. That is a Saturday. The next regularly scheduled council meeting is on Monday, October 5th. A delay would require a special meeting to consider.
As well as, just so you understand, there is currently a motion on the table. So,
Madam Clerk, who made the motion originally?
I think only Vice President Anderson made the motion at this time.
Yep, the original motion.
Oh, the original was, just a second.
It was Preschel or Forbeck, seconded by
Forbeck,
Blakely.
yep. Forbeck and Blakely.
So you have a motion by Councilor
Forbeck and a
Forbeck.
second by Blakely.
Right, so Councilor Forbeck would have to withdraw her motion with the second concurrence by Councilor Blakely.
So in order for us to move forward, it sounds like we have to have the counselors to change their motions or not.
In order for this to be delayed, as
Oh.
Vice President Anderson is requesting, the original motion maker, which was Counselor Forbeck, would have to withdraw her motion, and it would have to be also then acquiesced to by Counselor
Counselor
Blakely.
Okay.
If that did not happen, you have a motion and a second to approve the resolution.
Okay.
This is Counselor Forbeck, and I have a question. I mean,
Go ahead, Counselor
can't
Forbeck.
remove this. We can't remove this unless we decide, I mean, we're going to have a special meeting.
That's correct.
Correct.
Right, we can't just decide it on Monday, October 5th. It has to be decided before that. So, I'm not gonna remove this unless we maybe discuss whether that's even possible. Can we have a special meeting, on that last week of September?
Thank you, Counselor Forbeck. And so where's your stance, Counselor Blakely?
It doesn't matter
If Counselor Forbeck's unwilling to withdraw
I'm sorry,
her
are you
motion.
calling on me?
No, I'm sorry, just a second. I'll get clarification from the city attorney and then from the clerk
The
treasurer.
calendar's a little odd. I'm sorry, are you calling on me?
Not at this moment, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, Counselor Blakely.
Can we have clarification from the city attorney?
Well, it sounds like Counselor Forbeck was asking for whether or not a special meeting would be possible in order for her to withdraw her motion
Okay.
to approve the resolution.
Correct.
Okay. Clerk Stadler, where do we go from here at this point?
Counselor Forbeck?
Because we have a motion and we have a second.
Right, Counselor Forbeck, unless you are willing
Yeah.
to remove your motion or withdraw your motion, I can't tell you definitively without polling the counselors on their availability. Certainly, we would make every effort to schedule a closed session. If the council.
There could be no closed session.
I didn't mean closed, I meant special. I apologize, I misspoke. I meant special meeting of the council. So I cannot definitively answer your question. We would make every effort. That said, it is currently September 21st, and the absolute deadline is Saturday, October 3rd. It is up to you whether or not to withdraw your motion.
Okay, I will withdraw my motion.
Counselor Blakely, do you acquiesce to that motion to withdraw?
No, I won't acquiesce on the grounds that waiting till later will just reduce the time people have to make their plan for voting and get it taken care of, just in case we end up sticking with the changed polling places. So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to acquiesce my second.
All right, Madam President, you have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I would suggest you put it to a vote.
Okay. And can we clarify the resolution that we're voting on, please?
So, Resolution 2020-162 establishes the polling place for November 3rd, 2020, that includes the consolidation of Ward 16 with 17 and 18 to Todd Elementary.
Okay. So I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
No.
Counselor Blakely.
Aye.
Counselor Forbeck.
Aye.
Counselor Keys.
No.
Counselor Levy.
No.
Counselor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes 4 yes, 3 no.
Okay. And next on the agenda?
There are no licenses this evening. Under item 8A in ordinances, we have consideration of ordinance number 3683, approving a zoning map amendment from C3, Community Commercial District, to PUD, Planned Unit Development District, for the properties located at 1405 Cranston Road and 2213 Advance Drive. This is second reading.
At this time, our Community Development Director, Julie Christensen, will present.
So this is another planned unit development. I think it's the year for planned unit developments. And so at a prior meeting, you did approve the PUD plan. It was on July 6th. And now you're at the second step of the rezoning to planned unit development. You held a public hearing at your last meeting and held the first reading, and this is on your agenda for action this evening. And Plan Commission did vote unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning.
Thank you. Can I please have a motion to approve the ordinance, please?
So moved. This is Councilor Preschel.
Moved by Councilor Preschel. Is there a second?
Second by Levy.
Second by Councilor Levy. At this time, I will take questions and discussion from councilors, beginning with Vice President Anderson. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I do not, thank you.
Councilor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, once again, the Plan Commission meetings had the questions thoroughly answered. Thank you.
At this time, there's a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councilor Blakely.
Aye.
Councilor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councilor Keys.
Aye.
Councilor Levy.
Aye.
Councilor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Under item 8B, consideration of ordinance 3685 to amend section 15.30 sub 1 and sub 2 of the Code of General Ordinances of the City of Beloit pertaining to forfeitures for possession of 25 grams or less of THC and possession of drug paraphernalia. This is first reading.
This is the first reading, and City Manager Lori Curtis Luther will present for us this evening.
Thank you. At the direction of council, staff reviewed the forfeiture schedule for THC possession of 25 grams or less and drug paraphernalia ordinance violations for both adults and juveniles. Staff identified a conflict with state law and advised that the forfeiture for juvenile drug paraphernalia first offense be revised to a maximum of $50 and second offense be revised to a maximum of $100. I should have been more clear in the staff report and want to make sure that the councilors and the public understand. The municipal court has made the correction to be compliant with state law and only imposed those forfeitures that were consistent with state law. The proposal brought forward in regard to those specific forfeitures simply make our ordinances also consistent with state law. So I didn't want to imply that any inappropriate fees or forfeitures had been charged. They implemented that decision once the state law went into effect. The proposed forfeitures indicated in the staff report, which reduces first, second, and third offenses for adults and juveniles in the possession of THC and drug paraphernalia charges, were made based on a prior joint session of the City Council and the municipal court, in which the concept of juvenile forfeitures being half the cost of adult forfeitures was instituted. That said, other than the required change to be consistent with statute, this is a policy decision for the council and staff has no formal recommendation. The proposal before you would reduce the current fines for the possession of THC for an adult. In the first offense, 300 would be reduced to 100. The second offense, the current 500 would be reduced to 200. The third offense, 750, would be reduced to 400. However, I should also point out that second and third offenses for possession of THC, either for juveniles or for adults, are felony convictions. Those are automatically referred to the district attorney's office, and there are only very rare circumstances, none of which I could identify in recent history or in any of the historical records that we were aware of, where the district attorney has referred second or third offenses back to a municipal court. However, the purpose of having them on the books is in case a district attorney chose to refer them back to municipal court rather than to treat them as felonies at the district court, circuit court level. To make sure I got my terminology correct there. For the adult drug paraphernalia possession charge, and please note that that could include and does include drug paraphernalia that is not related to THC or not solely related to THC, but any drug paraphernalia. The first, second, and third offenses for adults are the same as the possession of THC. The juvenile forfeitures are half that amount at a current rate of $150 for a first offense, $250 for a second offense, $350 for a third offense, and the proposed would reduce those charges to $50 for the first offense, again consistent with state law, $100 for second offense, and $200 for third offense. Those apply to both the possession of THC and to drug paraphernalia for juveniles. With that, I will stand to answer any questions. The only final item I would note is that pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 800.037, the municipal court judge who is elected and serves autonomously must agree with the city council's forfeiture schedule. The municipal court judge has seen this proposed schedule and is in concurrence.
Thank you for that information, City Manager Luther. Can I please have a motion to lay this over? Is there a motion?
Vice President
Yes, also move. Councilor Blakely.
Okay, so I think Vice President Anderson made the motion. I'll second by Councilor Blakely.
I don't believe that's correct.
He tried.
Oh,
He
he
said
did?
first.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah. Okay, and with that said, we will take questions and discussion on the motion, beginning with Vice President Anderson. Do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Not questions, but just a couple comments. I really appreciate staff taking a look at this. I know I've asked for it, and I believe a couple other council members have too, and also our community. So I really want to applaud them for being receptive to the community when they're asking for something to change. This was definitely overdue in my opinion, and I'm glad we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you. Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I do not, thank you.
Councilor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Just that, just to clarify, I think in past discussions, we've mentioned how many emails. It's item 8 in the long list that they sent us. And this is something that's been a long time coming, but we have to realize that when it comes to criminalization of marijuana, that's a state and federal matter that the city can only make gestures like, and this is a nice gesture. I kind of wish it went further, but I understand it has to make sense from a processing point of view as far as the cost of court and the cost of, providing this deterrent and this policing. I just wish that the state and the feds would get on with it. Clearly, the population in the city and elsewhere has stated that they would like to see this done. And we can't do much more than this, what we're proposing here. So I will just leave it at that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Preschel. At this time, there's a motion and a second to lay over the ordinance. I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councilor Blakely.
Aye.
Councilor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councilor Keys.
Aye.
Councilor Levy.
Aye.
Councilor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. We do have some appointments this evening. The individuals named, about to be named, have been nominated for a seat on a city board committee commission. Each nomination is subject to confirmation by the city council. Approval of appointment will be accomplished by one motion unless a council member requests to take up a nomination separately, in which event the nomination will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda. There are 5 appointments to, looks like, I'm sorry, 6 appointments to 3 different boards. On the Business Improvement District, we have Lynn Volbrecht replacing Amy Wilson as the Beloit College representative. Brandon D. Beavers Jackson replacing Tila Lemereau as a resident at large. To the Park Recreation and Conservation Advisory Commission, we have Joe Reinhardt, who is an incumbent, and also incumbent Kyla Engen, youth, and then John C. Kalkertz, replacing Mike Charmita. In Plan Commission, we have Mike Ramsden replacing Willis Zick.
Thank you. Motion. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the appointments, please?
Moved by Levy.
Nancy Forbeck, I so move.
Moved by Councilor Levy, seconded by Councilor Forbeck. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
No one's opposed. With that said, motion carries. Okay. Next, we will,
Yeah, that takes us to councilor activities and upcoming events.
right, and with those councilor activities and upcoming events, you can also give your committee report if you'd like to, councilors. We will begin with Vice President Anderson.
I'll try to keep it brief. Just once again, get out to the farmers market before it's over. You don't want to miss out on that. And also, we have a lot of great places to walk around in our community. Please take advantage of those too. The weather is really nice. Last thing I will say is, just from a committee thing, I'm on the appointment review committee with President Duncan, and we still have quite a few vacancies. So if anyone on the council or anyone who's listening knows somebody who could get involved, please do. We have a Tavern League rep position for the Alcohol Beverage License Control Committee. We have a vacancy on the appointment review committee. We have a vacancy for first alternate and a second alternate on the Board of Appeals. 2 vacancies on the Board of Review. 1 vacancy on the Community Development Authority. 1 vacancy on the Equal Opportunities Commission. 3 vacancies on the Landmarks Commission. And 2 vacancies on the Traffic Review Committee. It's really important that we have people getting involved. Far too often we have people saying, well, I didn't know that was happening, or when did that come up? So if you want to be in the know, get on a committee. It's definitely important. It can help our city really thrive. Thank you.
Councilor Blakely.
I too will be really brief. I attended a program by the Diversity Action Team last Thursday, to talk about minorities during the time of pandemic. It was very worthwhile. People from a lot of different organizations, volunteers and pros from throughout the county and state were in attendance at this meeting online. 52 people, I think, were in attendance. It's a really worthwhile group, so keep your eyes open and think about attending some of their programs. I also want to give a quick shout out and congratulations to Norma Vargas, who's an administrative assistant in the Department of Public Works. She had a letter from a citizen full of high praise for an excellent job she had done in helping this person figure out the whys and wherefores and getting things accomplished. So congratulations, Norma. That's been my experience with you in the past when I was a citizen and needed help with some concerns or problems. Thank you again. Okay. Done.
Okay, Councilor Forbeck.
Really no report other than saying that my husband and I continue to try to shop locally, so we're trying to be good citizens in that way. Thank you.
Councilor Keys.
I do not have a commission report. As far as counselor update, I have been able to volunteer again with the Merrill Community Sharing Garden and Beloit Blogging, and thank you to all individuals involved. And last, I just want to highlight that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and that it's a great time to remind everyone that mental health is part of our overall health, and suicide is often a result of an untreated mental condition. So NAMI is an excellent resource for individuals and families impacted. And if you know anyone in an emergency, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-TALK, which is 8255, or call 911 immediately. So please help us stop the stigma, extend grace to your neighbor, and know that you're not alone. This ends my report.
Councilor Levy.
No report.
Councilor Prushel.
No report. I will just remind everyone that in this crazy times we live, in this next 6 weeks or so, 8 weeks, be kind, be tolerant, be understanding, and if you haven't got anything good to say, maybe consider not saying anything. You have a good night. Thank you.
And now my report. First, I want to thank Beloit College's Office of Student Success, Equity, and Community for the Beloit College Aussie Scholar and Residence recognition. I was honored to be introduced by Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes and joined him in speaking to the Beloit College students in honor of Grace Ousley, who was the first Black woman to graduate from Beloit College. She stood up for social justice and made a great impact in our Beloit community. So again, what a tremendous event. And I would also like to give again special thanks to Beloit College and all who made that endeavor such a huge success. And regarding my council activities, I attended the appointment review committee. So please go to our Facebook or City of Beloit website page if you are interested in volunteering to serve on a committee. Or you can call the executive assistant, Pam Lathrop, at 364-6614 for more information. And if you're interested also in being a volunteer and with the polls, you can certainly go onto our website for that information as well. And in closing, I want to echo warm sentiments to Chief Zabowski, who is leaving the Beloit Police Department. And I would like to say to him, we want to thank him for his service. And Chief Zabowski, we wish you all the best. This is all I have for my report. Next, we will go to item 11, which is the city manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to very briefly bring the council and the public up to speed with current numbers for COVID-19 in Beloit proper and from Rock County. And in the past 7 days, there have been an additional 52 positive cases of COVID-19 in Beloit proper and an additional 173 new cases in the remainder of Rock County. I think this information is important. It is interesting, and though we do not have enough evidence to support the correlation or a causation, pardon me, there is a correlation in Beloit, whereas the number of new cases as a percentage of population compared to the rest of the county is not currently as high as we were early in the disease management and understanding. And the Beloit school districts opted to begin with virtual school rather than in-person school. The number of cases in the county and the ages of individuals who are being infected are substantially younger than we were previously experiencing as well. And most of the cases throughout the county as a whole are between 15 and 34-year-olds. So there is no action item on the agenda for you this evening. I simply wanted to bring forward this information for your knowledge. We are updating the city's website. You can also access information on Rock County Department of Health and Human Services. And recent information is demonstrating the possibility that wearing face coverings not only reduces the opportunity for exposure to other people, but to reduce the severity of illness that an individual wearing a face covering might experience if ultimately infected. We are seeing a reduction in the severity of cases, and the hospitalizations, while not where we optimally want to see them, they are not increasing at the rate that we saw early on in this year. That's all I have to report this evening.
We do have an item under 12A. It is consideration of Resolution 2020-148, approving the Beloit Transit Development Plan and major route changes.
At this time, our Deputy Director of Community Development, Terry Downing, will present.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. As you know from the last council meeting, the Beloit Transit System completed the development of a transit development plan, which is required every 5 years of all public transit agencies. A transit development plan assesses the public transportation needs of the community and the effectiveness of its current and past route systems. This plan was commissioned by the State Line Area Transit Study, or SLATS, group, and took an expanded look at the regional transportation needs of the greater Beloit State Line area. As a result of this study, Beloit Transit System is proposing a completely new route system, which is outlined within the Transit Development Plan. The full Transit Development Plan is attached to the council packet. It's very long. I don't know if you've all had time to review it, but it has a lot of information about our ridership and how the expenses and how we compare to other transit organizations across the state and across the nation. Our decision to change the routes were based on that information. We also held once we developed the plan and the new route system, we held 3 public information sessions to solicit input from passengers and other interested parties. The dates are listed in the staff report. We also had opportunities for people to submit comments on our website and handwritten comments during the public outreach sessions, and we had forms available for people who were riding the buses, and they could just give those to the drivers. All of the comments that we received, written comments, were read during the last council meeting, and we also received a lot of verbal comments. We had a lot of conversations with passengers and interested parties during those outreach sessions. So based on those public comments and also budget considerations, the following adjustments have been made to the proposed routes. These adjustments are included in the plan as an addendum. So if you remember from looking at the routes the last 2 times I was at council, we had these 2 inner loops, west inner and on east side inner loop, and then a large outer loop, which we were calling the super loop. It was blue. We had a lot of comments about that large loop. The loop was an hour and a half, but we were going to put 3 buses on that loop, so a bus would go every half an hour. But as we started hearing from passengers, as they tried to practically put themselves on those routes to do their daily activities, it became clear that some passengers would have to ride for almost an hour and a half to get to some places, and sometimes even longer than that. And it just, when you go to use the routes, it wasn't as practical as it looked like it was on paper. So we made some changes to that loop. We broke that loop into 3 different routes. We believe this will make less time for crosstown rides. It'll be more convenient for people to access Walmart, which is one of the big places that people take the bus to. The Walmart line will be 1 hour rather than a half an hour, but it will go by, the bus will go by twice because we call it a rocker route, where it just travels the same route and goes back and forth. And we have a crosstown loop, which will help people get from the west side over to the east side a little bit better. So originally we had the large outer loop going counterclockwise, and now we've broken off a piece of that, and we have it going clockwise instead to get over to the east side. And then we broke off the clinic loop. That'll be a half an hour, and that one will not go down to the transfer center. Instead, it will have a transfer point at Piggly Wiggly, and then almost all of the routes go to Piggly Wiggly, so people can transfer there in order to get to the places that they need to go. The gateway route, we decided to do 4 hours each day, 2 rounds in the morning and 2 rounds in the evening. We looked at the start times for Amazon in particular to make sure that we could at least get people to work for first shift, which we believe we can do outside of the very first shift, which starts at 4:30 a.m. We just don't have our buses running that early. We also looked at the Van Gelder or Coach USA bus schedule to make sure that, because that gateway route will also connect to that bus that brings people down from Madison and up from Rockford or Chicago, so that way they can transfer to the gateway route. And then we did the same thing in the afternoon or the evening. We looked at the start times of second shift, the end times of first shift, and then the Van Gelder Coach USA bus and those connections to make sure that our timing was convenient for people to transfer to our bus system, our public transportation. Saturday service, based on the comments that we had from people, our Saturday service, the way it is now, is not very convenient as far as time goes. So it's a reduced route structure than what we have during the week. So people it's taking them an hour or 2 hours just to get across town, or they're at a place and then they have to wait 80 minutes or so to get the bus again. So we heard a lot of comments about how inconvenient that was. And then we actually heard a lot of comments about how convenient the on-demand service was when we ran that for COVID, during COVID. So we have decided to do on-demand service on Saturdays. So we believe that the on-demand service on Saturdays will be more convenient for people, as far as it will take them directly where they need to go, and then pick them up again so they're not waiting these long times. We did have people tell us that they've decided not to take Saturday service and just find rides from friends or family, or just not take the bus at all on Saturday because the current system is so inconvenient. So we do believe that this on-demand system will work. We have experience with that. Our passengers have experience with that. And by doing that, we'll keep our hours at 8 to 4. And then we just think that that'll be a lot more convenient for our riders. If the passenger or the ridership grows, where we have to add another bus or two, then we will probably need to consider going back to a fixed route system. But that remains to be seen. So there is a map in the addendum is in your packet, and there is a map of the new route system that shows the adjustments that we made to the routes from the last time that you saw the map. I should note that we also took a lot of comments from our drivers because they're very close to the passengers and they see what the needs are and what our passengers, and they hear what the passengers are saying. So we also did consider the input of our drivers. So we will have a total of 6 routes and 7 if you include the Beloit Janesville Express. We think that this will be much better for the community. And that concludes my report unless people have, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, Terry, for that presentation. What we'll do is we'll get a motion and a second on the floor, and then we'll take questions and comments from councilors. So can I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
This is Councilor Brechel. I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilor Preschel, and I believe that was Councilor Forbeck, and it was the second by Councilor Forbeck. Now I'll take questions and discussion on the motion, beginning with Vice President Anderson. Do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No question, just a comment. Terry, just thank you for making adjustments to this with citizen feedback, and I think this bus route that the routes you've come up with are great improvements. So just really wanted to let you know that I think I can speak for everyone. We really appreciate the work you put into this.
Thank you.
Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I just want to say thank you to Terry Downing and her staff for all their hard work and their thoroughness in gathering input from the bus riders and the bus drivers. It's really a great thing you've done here. Thank you.
Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Just 2 comments. I'm going to tag on to my other counselors here and say, Terry, wow, good job. Thank you so much. In my prior life, and during a couple of my jobs, I had participated in the 5-year changes. And I'm just telling you that this has been so thorough and so responsive, Terry. I'm very proud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Keys.
I'm going to echo everyone else and say thank you so much for your hard work and your responsiveness. It's very much appreciated. I have one quick question because I can't recall just offhand. Given that Piggly Wiggly is going to be more of a transfer site, is there a structure? Is there like a formal bus stop, stop structures there for folks to wait if the weather is inclement?
I believe James Thompson is at City Hall in the audience. I can't see, but he will know that. I don't know it by heart where all the shelters are, but I believe there's a shelter there.
And James is here,
James, are you
and
there?
he's going to answer that best he can. James, go ahead.
Currently, there isn't a shelter there. Piggly Wiggly has an entranceway that they welcome passengers to wait on the bus in there, and they kind of use that as a shelter from the weather.
Okay, thank you. I've had constituents ask about bus shelter, so I was just curious. Thank you very much.
Counselor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion? Thank you, James.
No, just basically wanted to say, like everyone else, thanks to Terry and James and their entire staff and the drivers for all that they've done. Don't worry, Eric, I'm gonna get used to calling you James one of these days, but I wanted to just say great job, and this is what we're all about, so good job.
Counselor Preschel.
I'll just echo the previous sentiments and say that I do see a lot of people at Walmart, and I spend 3 days a week out there. And the feedback process that you guys put in and listening and gathering information was deeply appreciated by at least 2 people that work at Walmart that come up and told me how happy they were that they had that opportunity and how well you listened and understood and appreciated their input. And it was a good process. It's really gratifying to see this happen, especially, it's a nice improvement. And I did find the right map, Terry, in case you were wondering or somebody was wondering. It was so big.
I know it is.
And all the other ones were so small, and they were the ones I looked at first, of course. But it looks really good. And it's still revenue neutral. That would be my only question. I know we were pushing on this to get revenue neutral as far as we proceed, and I know you had to make these adjustments, and I would assume that's still the case. We want to make that clear to anybody watching. So, thank you again, Terry. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And next, my comment, I just want to say thank you so much to Terry, James, and all of the staff for your hard work on this, on the development and route changes. And I just want to end with, I know that this will be very good for Beloit. So thank you. That said, at this time, there's a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Blakely.
Enthusiastic aye.
Counselor Forbeck.
Me too. Aye.
Counselor Keys.
Aye.
Counselor Levy.
Aye.
Counselor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously and brings us to adjournment.
I will now accept a motion to adjourn. Moved by Counselor Levy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Preschel. Any opposed? With that said, motion carries. We are now adjourned. This ends our city council meeting for this evening. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.